She grabbed his tie and pulled him down, crashing her lips against his. This kiss wasn't clumsy or uncertain like their first. This was 10 years of longing and love and promises kept. His arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her slightly off the ground. Her hands tangled in his hair, which was softer than it looked. They kissed like they were trying to make up for a decade in a single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jaewon pressed his forehead against hers. "I'm not letting you go again. I don't care what obstacles come. I don't care what my family says. I don't care about anything except this. Us, your grandmother, can adjust or not. I'm done living for other people's expectations." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "I love you, Amara Williams." He was 14 years old when he made a promise that would define the next decade of his life. Standing at an airport terminal, tears streaming down his face, watching the only girl he'd ever loved disappear through security. Jaewon Park whispered words that sounded impossible, even as he said them. "I'll wait for you. 10 years, 20 years, forever." His family had torn them apart, called her unsuitable, forced her family out of the country, destroyed what they thought was just a childhood crush. They had no idea they were creating a love story that would span a decade. Fast forward 10 years. He's now the youngest CEO in his company's history. Powerful, untouchable, worth billions. And he's never stopped thinking about her. Not for a single day. The silver bracelet slipped from Jaewon Park's fingers and clattered against the mahogany desk. His hand trembled as he picked it up again, the metal warm from being clutched too tightly for too long. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his sole office, the city glowed with evening lights, but he saw none of it. All he could see was her face in that worn photograph. The one he'd carried for 10 years, like a promise he refused to break. "Mr. Park, your car is waiting." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, but Jaewon didn't move. In exactly 12 hours, he would board a plane to Atlanta. In exactly 13 hours, he might see her again. The woman his family had torn him away from when he was just a boy, with nothing but love and impossible dreams. "Cancel it," he said quietly. "I'll walk tonight." Some people called him crazy. The youngest CEO in Park Industries' 50-year history, walking alone through Seoul's streets like a man with nowhere important to be. But Jaewon had learned something in his 25 years. Success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. And for 10 years, there had only been one person he wanted. Her name was Amara Williams, and she had been his entire world when the world still felt small enough to hold in 2 hands. It started on a Tuesday in September, 15 years ago, when 12-year-old Jaewon sat alone in the Seoul International School cafeteria, pushing rice around his plate with chopsticks he barely had the appetite to use. His life had always been scheduled down to the minute: language tutors at dawn, piano lessons after school, business etiquette on weekends. His father reminded him daily that he was the future of the Park family legacy, that every choice mattered, that there was no room for childish mistakes. So when the new girl walked into the cafeteria that day, lost and holding her lunch tray like a shield, Jaewon did what he'd been trained to do. He minded his own business. He looked away. He focused on the rice that had gone cold on his plate. But then she laughed. It wasn't a polite laugh or a quiet one. It was bright and full and completely unashamed, echoing across the cafeteria because she'd apparently sat down at a table still covered in someone else's spilled juice. She jumped up, brushing at her skirt, still laughing at herself, and Jaewon found himself smiling for the first time in weeks. "Need some help?" The words were out of his mouth before he could stop them. She turned, and he saw her properly then. Dark skin that seemed to glow in the afternoon light streaming through the windows, eyes that sparkled with something his world had been missing, warmth that radiated from her like she carried her own sun inside. She was wearing the school uniform all wrong, her tie loose and her cardigan buttoned crooked, and somehow that made her more real than anyone he'd ever met. "I'm Amara," she said, extending her hand with confidence that made his formal upbringing seem ridiculous. I'm new. Well, obviously I'm new. I just covered myself in juice, so that's a great start. J1, he managed, shaking her hand and feeling electricity shoot up his arm. And that table is always sticky. It's like a trap for new students. So you let me sit there? She raised an eyebrow, but she was still smiling. I was going to warn you. He lied, and she laughed again. No, you weren't, but that's okay. Help me find a clean table, and we'll call it even. That's how it began. Not with romance or destiny, but with spilled juice, and a girl who laughed at herself, and a boy who forgot, for just a moment, that his life wasn't supposed to include spontaneous friendships. They became inseparable. Amara was everything J1 had been taught to avoid. Loud when he was quiet. Impulsive when he was cautious. Free when he was trapped. She taught him American slang that made his tutors cringe. He taught her Korean phrases that made her accent so terrible he'd laugh until his stomach hurt. She'd drag him to the art room after school, sketching buildings and bridges while he did homework he barely needed to study for. Why do you work so hard? She asked one afternoon, watching him complete an entire week's worth of assignments in an hour. Because I have to, he said simply. That's sad. She tilted her head, studying him like he was one of her sketches. You should do things because you want to, not because you have to. What do you want to do? Design buildings that make people happy. Create spaces where different people can come together. She smiled that sunlight smile. What do you want? No one had ever asked him that. Not his parents, not his tutors, not his grandmother, who planned his life like a military campaign. J1 looked at Amara, at the passion in her eyes and the joy in her existence, and realized he'd never wanted anything more than he wanted to keep feeling what he felt when she was around. I want to be free, he whispered. Then be free, she said, as if it were that simple. For 2 years, she made it simple. She made everything simple. At 13, J1 would sneak out after his tutoring sessions to meet Amara at Han River Park. They'd sit on their favorite bench and watch the sun set over the water, talking about futures that seemed impossibly far away. I'm going to study architecture in America, Amara announced one evening, her legs swinging from the bench. Maybe Georgia Tech. My dad says they have the best program. That's far, J1 said, his chest tightening. So, you could come too. After high school, we could both go. My family would never allow it. Then don't ask for permission. She bumped his shoulder with hers. J1, you're so smart and so talented, and you act like you're in prison. I am in prison, he said quietly. Just one with nice furniture. Amara's expression softened. She took his hand, and even though they were just kids, even though neither of them understood what they were feeling, J1 knew in that moment that this wasn't just friendship anymore. This was everything. Then I'll wait for you, she said. However long it takes for you to be free. If you're loving this story so far, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. At 14, J1 understood he was in love. He understood it the way you understand breathing or hunger, something fundamental and undeniable. He loved the way Amara gesticulated wildly when she explained her building designs. He loved how she never let him take himself too seriously. He loved that she saw him, really saw him, not as the Park family heir, but as J1, just J1, a boy who wanted to be more than his last name. But love, he was learning, wasn't always enough. The first sign of trouble came when his homeroom teacher mentioned to his father that J1 had a very close friendship with the American transfer student. His father said nothing at the time, but J1 felt the temperature drop in their house. Conversations became clipped. His schedule became even more rigid. And then, one night at dinner, his grandmother spoke. I hear you've been spending time with unsuitable company. J1's chopsticks froze halfway to his mouth. His mother looked down at her plate. His father's expression was carved from stone. She's my friend. Jae-won said carefully. You are the heir to Park Industries. You don't have friends. You have connections, alliances, strategic relationships. His grandmother's voice could have cut glass. This ends now. No. The word escaped before he could stop it. The table went silent. No one told Grandmother Park no. No one challenged the matriarch. But Jae-won was 14 and in love and desperate, and he'd spent his whole life being obedient. Just this once, he needed to fight. She's important to me, he continued, his voice shaking, but determined. She makes me happy. Isn't that worth something? Happiness is a luxury you cannot afford, his father said coldly. We've indulged this long enough. It stops today. But it didn't stop. It got worse. 2 weeks later, Amara came to school with red eyes and devastation written across her face. Jae-won found her in the art room, alone, staring at a half-finished sketch of Han River Bridge. My dad got transferred, she said without looking at him, back to Atlanta. We're leaving in a month. The world tilted. What? Why? He said it was a better opportunity, that the company needed him at headquarters. Her voice broke. But I heard him arguing with my mom last night. He said something about pressure from the Korean office, about it being strongly suggested he take the transfer. Jae-won felt sick. My family. Yeah. She finally looked at him, tears streaming down her face. Your family. I'll fix this. I'll talk to them. You're 14, Jae-won. What can you do? The hopelessness in her voice destroyed him. They have all the power. We have none. He pulled her into his arms, both of them crying now. Both of them understanding that sometimes love wasn't enough when you were young and powerless and standing against forces bigger than both of you combined. I won't forget you, he promised into her hair. I swear, Amara, I will never forget you. You'll move on. You'll have to. Never. The next 4 weeks were torture. They stole every moment they could, knowing each one might be their last. Jae-won's family watched him like a prisoner. Amara's family prepared for a move none of them wanted. And through it all, 2 teenagers tried to figure out how to say goodbye to forever. The night before her flight, Jae-won broke every rule he'd ever followed. He snuck out of his house at sunset and met Amara at their bench by the Han River. The autumn air was cold, but they sat close, hands intertwined, watching the water reflect the dying light. I brought you something, Jae-won said, his voice thick with unshed tears. He pulled off the silver bracelet he'd worn since childhood, a family heirloom his grandfather had given him. This has been in my family for 3 generations. Jae-won, I can't. Please. He clasped it around her wrist, and it hung loose on her small arm. So you don't forget me. I could never forget you. She was crying again, and so was he. But you have to promise me something. Anything. Don't wait for me. Don't put your life on hold for something that might never happen. I can't promise that. Jae-won. No. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. I know we're young. I know this seems impossible, but I also know that what I feel for you isn't going to go away just because you're in a different country. So I'm making you a different promise. What promise? That I'll wait, however long it takes. 10 years, 20 years, forever. I'll become someone strong enough to fight for you. Someone successful enough that my family can't control me. And when I find you again, because I will find you, nothing will keep us apart. That's crazy, she whispered. Then I'm crazy. He leaned forward, and she met him halfway, and they shared their first kiss. It was clumsy and awkward and tasted like tears and desperation, and it was perfect. It was everything. I'll wait too, Amara said when they finally pulled apart. I don't want to, because I don't want you to waste your life, but I'll wait. They sat there until the stars came out, holding each other, trying to memorize the feeling of being together. And when Jae-won finally walked Amara home for the last time, he felt something inside him fundamentally change. The The boy who'd always followed rules, who'd always done what was expected, who'd never questioned his path, made a decision that night. He would become powerful. He would become undeniable. And he would find his way back to the girl who'd taught him what freedom felt like. The airport the next morning was chaos. Amara's family loaded suitcases while Jaewon stood apart, not caring that he'd told his family he was sick to skip school. Not caring about the consequences waiting at home. He just needed to see her one more time. When Amara spotted him through the crowd, she broke away from her family and ran. They crashed together, holding on like they could stop time through sheer force of will. "You came," she sobbed into his shoulder. "Always," he promised. "I'll always come for you." "Amara, honey, we have to go," her mother called gently. This was it. The end of everything and the beginning of a wait that would define the next decade of his life. "I love you," Jaewon said, the words feeling both too big and too small for what he felt. "I know we're just kids, but I love you. I'll love you when we're old enough for it to make sense. I'll love you when everyone says we're stupid for holding on. I'll love you through every single day we're apart." "I love you too," Amara whispered back. "Find me again, Jaewon. Promise you'll find me." "I promise." She kissed him one last time, quick and desperate, and then she was gone, walking toward security with her family. She turned back 3 times. The first time, she waved. The second time, she touched the bracelet on her wrist. The third time, she just looked at him, memorizing him the way he was memorizing her. And then she disappeared into the crowd, and Jaewon stood there until the plane took off, watching it climb into the sky and carry away the only person who'd ever made him feel alive. He went home to face his family's fury. The shouting, the disappointment, the increased restrictions and punishments, but none of it mattered. Because tucked in his wallet was a photograph of Amara laughing, and in his heart was a promise that felt more real than anything else in his carefully constructed life. 10 years, he told himself as his father lectured him about responsibility and duty. "I'll wait 10 years, and then nothing will stop me." He had no idea if she'd wait too. No idea if teenage promises meant anything in the real world, but Jaewon Park had spent 14 years being obedient, being perfect, being exactly what everyone expected. For the first time in his life, he was going to be selfish. He was going to hold on to love, even if everyone said it was foolish, even if the odds were impossible, even if it meant spending the next decade becoming someone strong enough to fight fate itself. Because Amara Williams had taught him something his family never could, that some things were worth fighting for, even when you had no guarantee of winning. And love, real love, the kind that reached into your chest and rearranged everything inside, was worth any wait, even if that wait lasted 10 years. The first year without her nearly broke him. Jaewon threw himself into his studies with an intensity that worried even his demanding father. Perfect scores weren't enough anymore. He needed to be exceptional. He needed to be undeniable. Every night, he'd pull out that photograph and whisper to it like she could hear him across the ocean. "I'm getting stronger. I'm becoming someone worthy of you. Wait for me." He had no way of knowing that in Atlanta, Amara was doing the exact same thing, staring at the silver bracelet she refused to take off, even when it turned her wrist green. By 16, Jaewon had transformed. No longer the gentle boy who'd fallen in love over spilled juice. He'd become focused, driven, almost cold to everyone, except the memory he kept locked in his heart. His family thought they'd won. They thought he'd forgotten the American girl and accepted his destiny. They had no idea he remembered everything. The sound of her laugh, the way she'd believed in his dreams when he'd been too afraid to believe in them himself, the promise he'd made by the river. His father started introducing him to daughters of business associates, suitable girls from powerful families, girls who knew how to smile politely and make appropriate conversation, and never, ever challenge him. Jaewon attended every meeting his father arranged, played the dutiful son, and felt nothing. "What about Park Soo-jin?" his grandmother suggested at dinner one evening when he was 19. The Park and Kim families uniting would be very advantageous. No, thank you, Jae-won said politely, cutting his food with precise movements. You haven't even met her properly. I'm sure she's lovely. The answer is still no. His mother watched him carefully across the table. She'd been watching him for 5 years now, seeing what his father and grandmother refused to see. Her son wasn't being difficult. He was being loyal to something they'd tried to destroy. Later that night, she came to his room, something she rarely did. Jae-won looked up from his business textbooks, surprised. You never forgot her, did you? His mother asked softly, closing the door behind her. There was no point in lying. No. Jae-won, you were children. We're not anymore. He set down his pen. And I still love her. I'll always love her. His mother sat on the edge of his bed, studying him with sad eyes. What if she's moved on? What if you're holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore? Then I'll deal with that when the time comes. But I won't betray what we had by pretending I can feel this way about someone else. He met his mother's gaze steadily. Would you have done it? If someone had forced you and father apart when you were young, could you have just forgotten him? His mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she touched his cheek gently. No, I couldn't have. But loving someone from a distance for years? Sweet boy, that's a special kind of pain. I just want you to be happy. I will be, when I find her again. The years continued to pass. Business school, an MBA, a position at Park Industries that he excelled at with almost frightening efficiency. By 23, Jae-won was being called a prodigy. By 24, he was vice president. And at 25, when his father's health began failing, he became the youngest CEO in the company's history. Power, he discovered, was exactly what he'd needed. With power came freedom. With freedom came choices. And with choices came the ability to finally do what he'd been planning for a decade. I want to expand internationally, he announced at his first board meeting as CEO. Specifically, I want to break into the American market. The board members exchanged glances. It was ambitious, risky, exactly the kind of bold move a young CEO might make to prove himself. Which city? One of the senior members asked. Jae-won didn't hesitate. Atlanta, Georgia. He told himself it was strategic. Atlanta was growing, had a strong economy, made perfect sense for expansion. He told the board the same thing. But late at night, alone in his office, he'd search for Williams and Associates online and wonder if the universe was finally on his side. Dr. Marcus Williams had started his own architectural engineering firm 3 years ago. It had an impressive portfolio, and listed among the partners was a name that made Jae-won's heart stop every time he saw it. Amara Williams, lead architect. He'd stared at her professional photo for an hour the first time he found it. She'd grown up. Of course she had. They both had. But she still had that light in her eyes, that warmth that had drawn him to her when they were just kids who didn't understand what they were building. The silver bracelet was visible in the photo, loose on her wrist. She'd kept it. After 10 years, she'd kept it. Jae-won had picked up his phone 100 times to call the firm, to email, to find any excuse to reach out. But something always stopped him. What if she had moved on? What if the bracelet was just jewelry now, not a promise? What if he contacted her and discovered that teenage love didn't survive a decade of distance? So instead, he built a plan. A $200 million development project that would require the absolute best architectural firm in Atlanta. He had his team research every company in the city, comparing portfolios and qualifications, building a case that would satisfy the board. And when Williams and Associates came out on top, legitimately, on merit, based purely on their exceptional work, Jae-won felt something he hadn't felt in 10 years. Hope. Book my flight to Atlanta, he told his assistant. I'll be overseeing this project personally. Sir, you have 3 other major developments that need your attention. This one is priority. Clear my schedule for the next 6 months. His assistant looked confused but didn't argue. No one argued with Jae-won Park anymore. He'd become exactly what he'd promised himself he'd become. Powerful enough, That no one could tell him no, not his family, not his board, not fate itself. The night before his flight, Jae-won stood at his office window, looking out at Seoul. This city held his entire life, his family, his company, his responsibilities. But it had never held his heart. That was in Atlanta, hopefully still wearing his bracelet, hopefully still remembering a boy who'd promised to wait forever. His phone buzzed. His mother. "I know why you chose Atlanta," she said when he answered. Jae-won didn't deny it. "I have to know, Mom. I have to know if she waited too. And if she didn't? Then at least I'll know. At least I can stop wondering." He paused. "But I don't think she forgot. I can feel it. That's either very romantic or very foolish. Maybe both." His mother laughed softly. "Your grandmother is going to lose her mind when she finds out. Grandmother doesn't control my life anymore. No one does." The freedom in those words was intoxicating. "I spent 10 years becoming someone strong enough to choose my own path. It's time to walk it." "I'm proud of you," his mother said quietly. "Terrified for you, but proud. Go find your girl, Jae-won, and if she's half as smart as I think she is, she's been waiting too." Across the ocean, Amara Williams stood in her apartment, staring at her calendar. Next week. The Park Industries meeting was next week. She'd seen the CEO's photo on their website. Older, sharper, almost unrecognizable in his expensive suit and severe expression. But his eyes were the same. Those eyes that had looked at her like she was the only person in the world. "You okay?" her roommate asked, watching her from the kitchen. "Yeah. Just nervous about this new project." "The Korean company? That's huge for the firm. Your dad must be thrilled." "He is." Amara touched the bracelet on her wrist absently. She always touched it when she was anxious. "It's just a big deal. Is it the project you're nervous about, or the fact that the CEO's name is Park?" Amara's head snapped up. "What? Oh, come on. You've been weird ever since we got this contract. And you're wearing that bracelet you never take off." Her roommate smiled knowingly. "I've known you for 3 years, Amara. You don't date. You don't even seem interested in dating. And now a Korean CEO is flying in personally for a meeting. And you look like you're about to pass out. It's probably not even him." Park is a common name in Korea. But it could be him. It could be, after 10 years of silence, 10 years of wondering, 10 years of wearing a silver bracelet and turning down every guy who asked her out because none of them made her feel the way a 14-year-old boy had made her feel. Don't forget to hit that like button if this story is touching your heart. We're just getting to the good part. The morning of the meeting, Amara changed outfits 6 times. Professional, but not trying too hard. Confident, but not closed off. She settled on a navy dress with a blazer, then stared at the bracelet. Should she wear it? Would that seem desperate? Would he even notice? She wore it. She'd worn it every day for 10 years. She wasn't stopping now. The Williams & Associates conference room had been prepared meticulously. Architectural renderings lined the walls. Presentation materials organized perfectly. The entire team assembled early, waiting for the clients who could make or break their year. Amara's father squeezed her shoulder. "You've got this, honey. Your designs are brilliant." "Thanks, Dad." She tried to smile, but her stomach was doing gymnastics. "Are you sure you're all right? You seem off." "Just want this to go well." At exactly 10 o'clock, the receptionist called. "They're here." Amara's heart stopped. The door opened. Junior executives entered first, then assistants, and then him. Jae-won Park stepped into the conference room, and the entire world went silent. He was taller, broader. His face had lost the softness of youth, replaced with sharp angles and a jaw that could cut glass. His suit probably cost more than her car. His expression was controlled, professional, completely unreadable. But then their eyes met across the conference table, and she saw it. The crack in his composure, the sharp intake of breath, the way his hand tightened on the briefcase he was holding. It was him. After 10 years, it was really him. "Good morning," Amara's father said, stepping forward with his hand extended. "I'm Dr. Marcus Williams, founder of Williams & Associates. Thank you for this opportunity." Jae-won shook his hand mechanically, but his eyes never left Amara. The pleasure is ours. Your firm's reputation is exceptional. This is our lead architect, my daughter, Amara Williams. She'll be heading up this project." J1 extended his hand, and Amara took it. The moment their skin touched, electricity shot through her entire body. His hand was warm and strong, and he held on just a second too long. "Miss Williams," he said, his voice perfectly steady, even though his eyes were screaming. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Park." She was amazed her voice worked at all. "Welcome to Atlanta." His gaze dropped to her wrist, to the silver bracelet hanging there, exactly where he'd placed it a decade ago. Something flickered across his face, too fast for anyone else to catch, but she saw it. Joy, relief, love that had never diminished, only grown deeper with time. "Shall we begin?" her father suggested, oblivious to the tension crackling in the room. The meeting was 90 minutes of exquisite torture. Amara presented her designs, and J1 asked questions that proved he was listening, but every word between them carried double meaning. Every glance held 10 years of longing. His team discussed logistics and timelines, and all she could think about was the way his voice had deepened, the way he sat with complete authority, the way he'd become everything he'd promised he'd become. Strong, powerful, undeniable. And he was here, in her city, in her conference room, looking at her like no time had passed at all. When the meeting finally ended and people began gathering their materials, Amara's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her portfolio. Her father was walking the Park Industries team toward the door, making pleasant small talk about Atlanta's growth and development opportunities. J1 lingered, pretending to examine one of the architectural renderings on the wall. When the room finally emptied, except for the two of them, he turned. "You kept it," he said quietly, looking at the bracelet. "Every day," her voice cracked. "Every single day for 10 years. Amara." The way he said her name, like a prayer and a promise and a plea all at once. "I looked for you so many times. I almost called. I know. Me too." Tears were building behind her eyes. "I thought you'd forget. I thought your family would make you forget." "Forget you?" He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, expensive and unfamiliar, but underneath it was something that was purely him. "I haven't forgotten a single moment. Not your laugh. Not the way you looked at the world. Not the promise I made by that river. J1, we were kids. We're not anymore." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched the bracelet with one finger. "And I'm still just as in love with you as I was at 14. More, actually, because I spent 10 years becoming someone worthy of you. You were always worthy." The tears fell now, and she didn't try to stop them. "I never stopped loving you either. I tried. I dated other people. Nothing ever felt right. Because we're supposed to be together." His voice was fierce. "I waited 10 years, Amara. I built an empire. I became powerful enough that no one can tell me who to love. And I chose to build a project in Atlanta because I needed to know. I needed to see if you'd waited too." "That's crazy," she whispered, echoing words she'd said a lifetime ago. "Then I'm still crazy." He cupped her face with both hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "I told you I'd wait forever. I told you I'd find you again. And here we are, she breathed. "Can I kiss you, please?" "I've been dreaming about kissing you again for 10 years. Instead of answering, she grabbed his tie and pulled him down, crashing her lips against his. This kiss wasn't clumsy or uncertain like their first. This was 10 years of longing and love and promises kept. His arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her slightly off the ground. Her hands tangled in his hair, which was softer than it looked. They kissed like they were trying to make up for a decade in a single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, J1 pressed his forehead against hers. "I'm not letting you go again. I don't care what obstacles come. I don't care what my family says. I don't care about anything except this. Us, your grandmother, can adjust or not. I'm done living for other people's expectations. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. I love you, Amara Williams. I've loved you since I was 12 years old, and I'm going to keep loving you for the rest of my life. I love you too, she said, laughing through her tears. This is insane. You flew across the world. You created a $200 million development project. I'd have created 10 of them if that's what it took. We have so much to figure out. Your life is in Seoul. Mine is here. The project. Our families. Everything is complicated. I don't care. He kissed her again, softer this time. We'll figure it out together. We've waited 10 years, Amara. I'm not waiting another day to start our life together. Someone cleared their throat in the doorway. They jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Amara's father stood there, looking between them with an expression of dawning understanding. So, Dr. Williams said slowly, I'm guessing you two have met before. Amara's face flushed crimson. Dad, I can explain. I think I'm starting to understand. Her father looked at Jae-won with new recognition. You're the boy from Seoul, the one who broke her heart when she was 13. Sir, I didn't want to leave, Jae-won said immediately, his CEO composure slipping into something more vulnerable. My family forced us apart, but I promised her I'd find my way back, and I meant it. Doctor. Williams studied him for a long moment, then sighed. You waited 10 years? Yes, sir. And you built a $200 million project just to see my daughter again? The project is legitimate, sir. Your firm earned this contract on merit. But yes, I chose Atlanta specifically because she was here. A smile tugged at her father's lips. That's either the most romantic or the most reckless thing I've ever heard. Both. Amara and Jae-won said simultaneously, then looked at each other and laughed. Well, Dr. Williams said, shaking his head, I suppose I can't fault a man for keeping his promises, but Jae-won, if you hurt my daughter again, I won't, sir. I'd rather die than hurt her. Good answer. He turned to leave, then paused. Amara. Honey, maybe take the rest of the day off. You two clearly have a lot to talk about. When her father left, Amara collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed. I can't believe this is happening. You're really here. After all this time, Jae-won knelt in front of her, taking her hands. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I've already told my board I'll be in Atlanta for the next 6 months, overseeing this project personally. 6 months? At minimum. Longer, if I can justify it. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look almost like the boy she'd fallen in love with. I have a decade of dates to make up for, Amara. I'm not rushing this. What about your family? Your grandmother? They'll have to accept it. I'm the CEO now. I make my own choices. His expression hardened slightly. And I choose you, every single time, forever. The next weeks were a blur of stolen moments and rediscovery. Jae-won worked during the day, collaborating with Amara on the development project. Their professional chemistry was undeniable. Her creative vision combined with his business acumen created something extraordinary. The project evolved from a simple mixed-use development into something more meaningful, a cultural bridge between East and West, incorporating Korean architectural elements with Southern design aesthetics. This is brilliant, Jae-won said one evening, studying her latest revisions. They were alone in the conference room, having stayed late again. You've created something that honors both our worlds. Our worlds, she repeated softly. I like how that sounds. He pulled her into his lap and she went willingly, resting her head against his shoulder. I've been thinking. Dangerous, she teased. I want you to meet my mother, properly this time. Not as the girl I mother, was forced to leave behind, but as the woman I'm building my future with. Amara tensed. Jae-won, your family. My mother has been on my side for years. She knew I never forgot you. She wants to meet you again. He tilted her chin up. And my grandmother is going to have to adjust. I'm not asking for permission, Amara. I'm informing them of my decision. That's very CEO of you. I learned from the best. He kissed her forehead. You taught me to fight for what I want, remember? You told me to be free. I was 13 and didn't understand the consequences. Maybe. But you were right. He held her closer. I'm free now. Free to love you openly. Free to build the life I want. And I want it with you. 3 months into the project, the news broke in Korea. Photographs of Jaewon and Amara leaving a restaurant together, his arm around her waist, her head thrown back in laughter. The Korean business press exploded. Park Industry CEO dating American architect. Young CEO's mystery romance. Traditional family faces, modern love. His phone rang incessantly. His grandmother, his board members, business associates, all with opinions about his personal life. Jaewon ignored most of them. But when his grandmother called for the 5th time, he finally answered. You need to return to Seoul immediately, she demanded. No, grandmother. I'm exactly where I need to be. This woman is causing a scandal. The family reputation is fine, and Amara isn't causing anything. I chose her. I've always chosen her. He kept his voice respectful, but firm. I understand this isn't what you wanted for me. But I spent 10 years becoming the man you needed me to be. Now I'm going to be the man I need to be. You're throwing away your future for a childhood infatuation. No, grandmother. I'm claiming my future. The one I've been working toward for a decade. He softened slightly. I love her. I've loved her since I was 12 years old. That hasn't changed. It won't change. You can accept it or not, but it won't change my decision. There was a long silence. Then, unexpectedly, his grandmother laughed. It was tired and resigned, but genuine. You have your grandfather's stubbornness. He chose me against his family's wishes, too. I didn't know that, because we don't talk about it. But he fought for me, just like you're fighting for her. Another pause. I want to meet her, properly. If she's going to be part of this family, I need to see what kind of woman commands such loyalty. Jaewon's heart soared. You'll love her, grandmother. She's extraordinary. She'd have to be, to wait 10 years for you. 2 weeks later, his mother and grandmother flew to Atlanta. Amara was terrified. She changed outfits 7 times before settling on a simple dress that was professional but warm. Jaewon held her hand the entire drive to the restaurant, pressing kisses to her knuckles every time she started to panic. They're going to hate me, she whispered. Impossible. You're too lovable. Your grandmother wanted you to marry someone suitable. You are suitable. You're perfect. He parked the car and turned to her. Amara, listen to me. I don't need their approval to love you. I'm bringing you to meet them, because you're already part of my life, and I want them to know you. But even if this goes terribly, nothing changes between us, okay? She nodded, drawing strength from his certainty. The dinner started awkwardly. His grandmother was formidable, studying Amara with sharp eyes that missed nothing. But then Amara started talking about the development project, her passion for creating spaces that brought people together, her vision for the cultural center that would showcase both Korean and American art. You designed this? His grandmother asked, studying the renderings Amara had brought. Yes, ma'am. With input from your grandson, of course. He has an incredible eye for how spaces function. He gets that from his grandfather. Something softened in the older woman's expression. This is beautiful work. Truly. Thank you. It's important to me that this project honors both cultures, that it becomes a bridge, not just a building. Jaewon's mother smiled warmly. I can see why my son loves you. You see the world the way he does, the way he used to, before we tried to make him into something he wasn't meant to be. Mom, Jaewon protested, but she shook her head. It's true. We almost destroyed his spirit, trying to fit him into a mold. She reached across the table and took Amara's hand. Thank you for giving it back to him. By the end of dinner, even his grandmother was smiling. As they said goodbye outside the restaurant, she pulled Amara aside. You make him happy, she said simply. I haven't seen real joy in his eyes since he was a boy. You brought that back. He makes me happy too, Amara replied honestly. Good. Then don't let him go. He's stubborn and sometimes too serious, but his heart is true. She patted Amara's cheek gently. Welcome to the family, child. Even if you drive me crazy, you're already one of us. If you're still watching, drop a comment below telling us what you think happens next. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible love stories. 6 months turned into a year. The development project flourished. Jae-won split his time between Seoul and Atlanta, and Amara started taking on international projects that brought her to Korea regularly. They built a relationship as partners in every sense, equals collaborating on work and life. On a spring evening, Jae-won convinced Amara to fly to Seoul for the weekend. I want to show you something, he said mysteriously. He took her to Han River Park, to the bench where they'd said goodbye 11 years ago. Cherry blossoms were falling like snow, and the sunset painted everything gold. This is where it started, Jae-won said, pulling her down to sit beside him. Where I promised I'd wait forever. You kept your promise, she said, leaning into him. Because you were worth waiting for. He turned to face her, and she saw tears in his eyes. Amara, we were just kids when we fell in love. We didn't understand what we were promising each other, but we kept those promises anyway. Through distance and time and every obstacle the universe threw at us. Jae-won, what? He slid off the bench, kneeling in front of her, and pulled out a small box. Amara's hands flew to her mouth. I had this made from the bracelet, he said, opening it to reveal a ring. The silver had been melted down and reformed, woven together with white gold, into something breathtaking. The metal that brought you back to me. The promise that we kept. Oh my God, she whispered. Amara Williams, I've loved you for 13 years. I waited 10 years to find you again. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that every second of that wait was worth it. His voice broke. Will you marry me? Will you let me love you forever, the way I promised when I was too young to understand what forever meant? Yes. She was crying and laughing simultaneously. Yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had always belonged there. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her as cherry blossoms fell around them like blessings. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I love you until I stop breathing. I love you too. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for fighting for us. Always, he promised. In every lifetime, I'd wait for you. In every universe, I'd choose you. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that blended Korean and American traditions. Both families attended, united in celebrating a love that had survived everything thrown at it. Amara wore a dress that transitioned into a modern hanbok for the reception. Jae-won cried during his vows. Her father walked her down the aisle with pride. His grandmother blessed their union with tears in her eyes. And when they kissed as husband and wife, the crowd erupted in cheers, for a love that had started over spilled juice, survived a decade of separation, and emerged stronger than ever. 3 years later, Jae-won stood in their home in Atlanta, watching Amara play with their 2-year-old daughter, Mina, while cradling their 6-month-old son, Elijah. The house was filled with laughter and chaos and love. Appa! Mina ran to him, and he scooped her up with his free arm, somehow managing to hold both children. Amara laughed at the sight. You're getting good at that. Practice, he said, grinning. Come here. She joined them, and he wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling his entire family close. This moment. This was what he'd been waiting for. Not just Amara, though she was the center of everything, but this life they'd built together. This family. This love that grew bigger every day. Remember when we thought waiting 10 years was forever? Amara asked softly. It felt like forever then. And now? Now it feels like no time at all. He kissed her temple. Because we have actual forever now. This, right here. Our kids. Our life. Everything we dreamed about when we were too young to make it happen. That weekend, they flew to Seoul for a family visit. At Han River Park, they sat on their bench with their children playing nearby. The same water flowed past. The same city rose behind them. But everything had changed. Do you ever regret it? Amara asked. The wait? Everything you went through? Jaewon looked at his daughter chasing butterflies, at his son sleeping peacefully in the stroller, at his wife, the girl who'd taught him what love meant when they were just children who barely understood the word. Never, he said firmly. Not for 1 second. Every day of waiting brought me here, to you, to them, to us. He took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her wedding ring, the one made from a promise forged in silver and kept for a decade. Some people never find this, Amara. They spend their whole lives searching for what we found when we were 12 years old. We got lucky, she said. No, we got stubborn. He smiled. We refused to let go. We refused to settle. We held on to love even when everyone said we were crazy. We were a little crazy. The best kind of crazy. He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, watching their children play in the same park where their story had begun. I'd do it all again. Every painful day. Every lonely night. Every moment of wondering if you'd wait too, because it led me here. Me too, she whispered. I'd wait another 10 years if it meant ending up exactly here. Mina ran back to them, breathless and excited. Ioma, Appa, look. She held up a flower she'd picked. Beautiful baby girl, Amara said, taking it. Like you, Ioma, Mina declared, with the confidence only a 2-year-old could have. Jaewon laughed. She's not wrong. You two are the most beautiful girls in the world. What about me? Mina demanded. Am I beautiful? The most beautiful, Jaewon promised, pressing kisses all over her face until she squealed with laughter. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Jaewon thought about the 14-year-old boy who'd stood in this same spot, heartbroken and desperate, making an impossible promise to a girl he loved more than he understood. That boy had no power, no resources, no plan, just love and determination, and a refusal to accept that distance meant the end. And somehow, impossibly, that had been enough. Thank you, he said suddenly. Amara looked up. For what? For waiting, for keeping the bracelet, for believing in a promise made by a kid who had no idea how to keep it. Thank you for keeping that promise anyway, she replied. For fighting for us when it would have been easier to move on. Moving on was never an option. He kissed her softly, ignoring Mina's giggles. You were always my endgame, Amara. From the moment you sat in that spilled juice and laughed at yourself. You were it for me. And you were it for me. My first love. My only love. My forever love. They stayed until the stars came out, their children playing nearby, their hands intertwined, their hearts finally at peace. The wait was over. The fighting was done. The obstacles had been conquered. What remained was simple and perfect and everything they dreamed of during those long years apart. Love, family, forever. And as Jaewon looked at the life he'd built with the girl who'd changed everything when they were just kids who didn't know better than to believe in impossible promises, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Every second of waiting had been worth it. Every tear, every lonely night, every moment of doubt had led him exactly where he was meant to be, in the arms of the woman who taught him that true love didn't expire. It didn't fade with distance or diminish with time. It waited, it endured, it fought. And in the end, it always won. The camera pulls back, showing the family silhouetted against the Seoul skyline, the river flowing peacefully beside them, the city lights beginning to twinkle like stars brought down to earth. A family born from a promise made by children. A love that survived everything and emerged victorious. Some people say you can't hold on to first love forever. That childhood promises don't mean anything in the real world. That time and distance kill even the strongest feelings. Jaewon Park and Amara Williams proved them all wrong. Because true love doesn't follow rules or logic or other people's expectations. True love does the impossible, waits the unthinkable, conquers the insurmountable, And when two hearts are truly meant to be together, not even 10 years, an ocean, and every obstacle the universe can create will keep them apart. This is their story. A story of patience and promises kept. Of love that refused to die. Of two people who grew up separately but never apart. Of a Korean CEO who waited a decade for his black queen. And a brilliant woman who never stopped believing that the boy who'd given her his bracelet would one day come back to claim her heart. They waited, they endured, they won. And they lived happily ever after. Exactly the way they'd promised each other when they were just kids, sitting by a river, dreaming of impossible forevers. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who believes in true love. Because stories like this remind us that sometimes, just sometimes, love really does conquer all.